I'm Dr. Rachel Griffiths, and I'm with my father and partner in aquatics.
Dr. Tom Griffiths.
Welcome to the Drowning Files, where each week we share a lawsuit we've been involved in or another true story with suggestions to learn from these tragedies to save lives. What case do you have today?
This case I worked on was another tragic case, as they all are, in the northeastern United States. It was a lake drowning, but this wasn't just any simple open water lake. It was created as a swim club where you pay to get in, a daily fee or a weekly fee or a monthly fee, or have a season membership. It was an old lake swimming club that had been there for decades, and it was really in ill repair, disrepair. The features that they put on and around the water were quite decrepit, to be honest, and it just wasn't up to date. They did have lifeguards on duty. Now, this was a fairly large lake. There were two lifeguards on duty. However, only one was providing patron surveillance. In other words, one was looking out for the safety of the swimmers in the water. The other lifeguard was away from the lake. He was stationed somewhere at the lake, but wasn't at lakeside. On this particular day, there was a boys' camp, kind of like a police camp or a military camp. I'm not mentioning the name of the camp in this one, but where these young men, teenage boys, would go to learn discipline, military drilling, marching, taking orders, to make them stronger men and to follow orders and so forth, just to make them good citizens. On this particular day, the barracks where they were housed, or the dormitories as we would call them, didn't have any air conditioning. The air conditioning failed. So it was really hot, sultry, humid day, and the directors of the camp decided to take the young men to go swimming. The fatal error they made was, rather than going to a clear water swimming pool, they decided to go to this lake. And they took the boys to the lake. I might add that the lake had black water, if you will, not totally black. I might call it brackish. Technically, that may not be correct, but the water was not very clear. You had about 5 to 6 foot of visibility. They had a diving structure out floating on the lake with many different heights of platforms and diving boards, but it was so old that the diving boards actually tilted downhill. So if you went to go to do a dive or a jump, your momentum would pick up because your center of gravity would be forward and leaning downhill. So the victim in this case went with his friends. They swam out to the diving platform. They got there without any problem. And this particular boy went off the 3 meter board, the high board, at least 3 or 4 times and got back to the diving platform. Wasn't a problem. On his fourth or fifth attempt, for some reason, he started struggling in the water. His friends, who went to this camp, police type of camp, attempted to save him while he was struggling on the surface of the water, but could not. The water depth was between 12 and 20 feet deep. Now, here's the problem. The one lifeguard on duty was stationed on a floating raft totally across the lake from this diving apparatus. And so by the time she was alerted that something went wrong, she quickly swam out to where the victim was, but he was no longer on the surface. And although his friends, his campmates told him where he went down, she just couldn't find them. The other guard tried to assist. Again, this was in water that was dark, and they did not have mask fins or snorkels to help them see underwater and also to help them dive down deeper. Eventually, they called 911. The rescue squad came in. And when you call 911 and the rescue squad shows up and the dive team shows up, usually it's over. And in this particular case, it was. They recovered the body relatively quickly because they knew where he went down. But by that time, it had taken so long, there was no chance for survival. And so a large settlement, it didn't go to a jury trial, but a large settlement was given to the victim's family because they felt that the lake was poorly maintained, number one. Number two, they had an inadequate number of lifeguards on duty. Of those who were on duty, and in this case there was only one, they were ill prepared to make the rescue, not properly trained. They didn't have the appropriate equipment. And so this is a case where, unlike some other cases where someone goes off a diving board and doesn't return to the surface, this boy had gone off the diving board, came back off the up to the surface, and struggled for a while. And his friends fought with him to try to keep him up on the surface, but he ended up sinking. So they should have responded in a timely fashion. They probably should have had someone sitting in a kayak or on a kayak or on a stand-up paddleboard patrolling the area. But above all else, they should have had someone stationed on the diving platform, had a person physically standing there to watch the divers and jumper go off so that they don't fall off the ladder and land on the deck, the platform that is. There's no horseplay. And so if they do get into trouble, to respond quickly while being in close proximity to the victim. So that's what I have for you today. It was a lake that was poorly maintained, poorly managed, and the lifeguards were not properly trained or equipped. In a lake like this, it's really, really important, particularly because of the unclear water, the dark water, that you know your child's swimming ability, know what they can do and what they can't do, and keep them in a safe depth of water. I tell people all the time, in a lake such as this, once someone slips beneath the surface of the water, most of the time, the vast majority of the time, you're not going to find them. So it's important, if you go to a lake like this, that you swim near a lifeguard, you know the depth of water. If the child or the people you are supervising are weak swimmers or not the swimmers, you don't want to put them in deep water again, because if they have a problem and you don't get them on the surface in a timely fashion, you're not going to get them out in time to resuscitate them and have them recover fully. Again, we always, in this type of environment, recommend properly fitting Coast Guard approved life jackets. These life jackets continue to be upgraded and improved. They're more colorful, they're more fashion oriented, and they work well. Like park rangers often say, we never find a drowning victim wearing a Coast Guard approved life jacket. So those are the recommendations I have for swimming in this type of environment. And bottom line is, don't depend upon the lifeguards. You don't know how well trained they are. You don't know how competent and confident they are. So you've got to be a lifeguard yourself, even though you may not be certified. You've got to look like a lifeguard. You've got to act like a lifeguard.